Hi, my name's Charlie Ford. I attended Davidson College for undergrad. I received a liberal arts education there, majored in neuroscience, and then took a few gap years before starting Emory University's MD-PhD program. I did my PhD in neuroscience, focused on oxytocin, the neurobiological basis of social bonds, and ways to target those systems for therapeutic purposes. Now I work in the biotech industry, and I started teaching MCAT prep courses over a decade ago and have been mentoring pre-med students ever since then. Probably the most valuable experience I've had in terms of preparing my mentees to apply to med school was spending 2 years on the MD-PhD program admissions committee. We interviewed fewer than 100 students every year, so we got the chance to go into really great depth with every single application. And that gave me a very nuanced understanding of how specific application details are perceived, how applicants as a whole are evaluated, and ultimately how final admissions decisions are made. Now I work in the biotech industry as a freelance consultant and contractor helping develop new therapies. My clients have ranged from brand new VC-backed biotech startups through to large pharmaceutical companies. I've worked on traditional small molecules and gene therapies, early stage target identification through to translational studies, through to clinical trials, and for a wide variety of diseases, from ultra rare genetic disorders through to very common neurodegenerative diseases. I also recently founded a startup that's making a digital therapeutic for anxiety disorders. So I attended Davidson College on a music scholarship, and I eventually won their top neuroscience research award, graduated magna cum laude, Phi Beta Kappa. Then at Emory in the MD-PhD program, I was elected to serve as the student representative on their executive committee and their admissions committee for 2 years. I also did a lot of teaching. I was the teaching assistant for the med school's neural anatomy and neural function courses for something like 6 years. I also led a couple journal clubs, and perhaps what I'm most proud of is very closely mentored 4 undergraduate students in lab during my PhD years. 2 of them were actually pre-med and are either residents or med students now. I think that the most critical thing for a medical student to do to succeed is maintain a growth mindset. The amount of information you're expected to learn is truly overwhelming, and it's overwhelming for everybody. You have to come to terms with the fact that you're going to get a lot of questions wrong, and you're going to make a lot of mistakes, and at times you're going to feel discouraged and ignorant. But that is all part of the learning process, and it's a normal thing. All growth occurs outside of your comfort zone, and the most important thing to do is embrace that and keep putting yourself out there and just stay focused on learning a little bit every day. Over time, that growth mindset allows your knowledge to compound, and that's ultimately how you develop expertise. I really believe that each student is unique in terms of their background, their experiences, their situation, and what they are looking for in an admissions consultant. So I think my job is really to partner with them and work backwards from what they need and want to figure out how I can have the biggest positive impact that I can on their admissions process. So if they need more structure and organization, I can give them structure. If they need to work on confidence in interviews, we can work on building confidence. If they have the details down and they need help with more big picture strategy, we'll focus more on strategizing their extracurricular activities and their essays. I think this adaptable approach is really valuable because it helps students come through in an authentic way when you're meeting the students where they are and adapting to them instead of expecting a bunch of different students to conform to your approach. And having that authenticity shine through in the applications and the interview is really critical because most people are out there trying to conform to some ideal of what the perfect pre-med student is. And when you come off as genuine, that makes you stand out in a really good way. My greatest strength as an admissions coach is helping students construct an authentic and powerful narrative around who they are as a person and an aspiring physician. It's about taking all the facts and experiences that make up an application and turning it into a compelling story. So, great storytelling can be like a superpower. You can probably remember movies that you watched years ago, and you can remember the plot and the characters, and you even root for some of those characters, even if they're objectively bad people. And that's because our brains are hardwired to remember stories and root for the protagonists in those stories. So one of the most powerful things that an applicant can do is use that psychological hack to make themselves more memorable and to get admission committee members rooting for them. The other really valuable aspect of narratives is that it can turn almost any weakness, even red flag issues, into a strength when they're carefully positioned in the context of a larger narrative that demonstrates personal growth and resilience. Because at the end of the day, admissions committees know that students can learn all the material that they need to in medical school, but what you can't teach somebody is the ability to be resilient and grow from their mistakes. So if you can demonstrate that in a story, you're golden. I owe virtually all the success I have in life to having phenomenal mentors, and I've been incredibly lucky in that regard. And I feel like it's now a kind of a moral imperative for me to pay that forward. And now I love helping people find their path. If you can help somebody's dreams come true, there's not much more rewarding than that.